Okay, we seem to be getting a lot of early texters. I guess the real estate or buying a house is really an interesting topic for a lot of our viewers, a lot of Filipinos in general. Now, if you want to take part in our discussions, you can text us at globe number 0915-209-6012. That's globe number 0915-209-6012. Kindly include your first name and where you're from so we can gauge our reach. And also, I'd like to say hi to our viewers in Taiwan, Brunei, China, Hong Kong, Mongolia, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan, and South Korea. Thank you as well to My Pamana Furniture for our set. My Pamana Furniture. Anyway, Cathy, you were talking about green architecture. I've been hearing a lot about that. I think that's the in thing in your industry nowadays. So what is green architecture? Is this for nature lovers? Lots of trees, lots of plants? Is it that simple?
No. Green architecture and sustainable design is all about integrating the use of proper materials, the right technology, the correct design into architecture or interiors that uses less energy, that is more efficient, that harnesses the resources around that community. So you don't need to import too much. And you spend less and imprint a smaller carbon footprint on the planet in the whole process of building or using that facility.
So is that sort of like making your house into a kind of a greenhouse wherein you make the most use of ambient light? Is that something?
You know what? The practice of green architecture and sustainable design is one of the easiest things to do here in the country, because for the longest time, we've employed tropical design. I remember studying at the UP Diliman under Dr. Jeronimo Manahan, a very noted architect, and he espoused tropical design. And you see a lot of good architects now, like Bobby Manyosa, who likewise developed this and imprinted this on the minds of the Filipinos, using good fresh air, allowing ventilation to increase inside your house, having a lot of natural lighting is also one, and the use of materials that breathe. So you don't end up with...
So it's cooler.
Yes, it's cooler.
You sort of fight the global warming thing at the same time.
That is correct. At the same time, you don't use a lot of toxic materials that people eventually inhale. Okay. That's correct, yes.
So what is a good example of tropical architecture? We may not have pictures of houses right now, but more or less, is that more on light colored, more on sort of what?
As a designer of hotels and resorts in the country, what we do is we infuse a lot of developments with higher floor-to-ceiling ratios. So
for
the
building
ventilation breathes, yes. And there's a high clearance. At the same time, there is such a thing that when you look at the original Bahay na Bato concepts, which the new San Jose builders are also loving, you see that there is an entry point for colder air and an exit point for warmer air. At the same time, when you study that old Bahay na Bato and Nipahat of the Philippines and of the Asian architects in general, you will see that there's so many elements of it that are very
that
green.
Can be integrated into
even in modern architecture.
Even the materials, like say, I think adobe is naturally cooler.
It's cooler.
But it's not a stuff.
It's not a stuff. There are painting companies now that are developing materials and paint compounds that actually help absorb impurities in the air. So there are so many materials now out in the market, and even if your house is modern or your condo interiors are also modern, then there is a way by which it could be made more green, more tropical, and in essence, more Filipino.
Okay, Cathy, we have some early texters who are asking for some tips on buying a place of their own, a house. As an architect, of course, you have, as we discussed earlier, sort of a face-to-face, person-to-person contact with the people. So what are some tips that you can give them?
Well, I think the very first step that buyers need to do is, as a member of the United Architects of the Philippines, we're very conscious in telling people that they should first work with a professional. work with an architect who will help achieve your purpose and your dream, following and understanding what the building codes are and what your personal goals are, at the same time balancing what you desire with your budget. That's very important.
With the budget.
Yes.
I understand you're a member of the United Architects of the Philippines and also of the American Institute of Architects. So there is that, you're up to date basically with the latest trends. Is architecture an industry of trends, meaning to say there's always something new? Because you know some people who are really used to architecture would look at the house and they would say that was probably built in the 60s or in the 70s just because of how it's built. So is it an industry of trends?
Well, at first glance, you would think that architecture is an industry of trends. But you see here in the Philippines now, it's changing. We are now kind of assessing which are the best choices and themes that are better for us. There was a time we were copying everything and everybody from all over the world. But slowly, our architecture profession now and our design industry in the Philippines in general is shaping up. You'll be surprised. I speak with developers from Thailand and developers also from Singapore. They're looking at the Philippines now as a good example of how, say, for example, Greenbelt is as a retail development where it was able to merge communities, tropical design, the elements of fresh air and gardens with retail and air conditioning. And it's a perfect example of a good retail development. And so all that was perceived to be trends before are now getting to be standards and classics.
Okay, so if anyone would want to perhaps discuss with you some of their visions as to their ideal homes, because it's always different for everyone, di ba? Yung,
Yes.
everyone has their dream homes. Of course, that's almost always limited by the financial capability. Oh, so few of us can just go to town and build the house just according to what they want. Anyway, tell us something about the ARCO Group and the PDP Architects.
Well, our company, ARCO Group and PDP Architects, does homes. We also do model units for some of the top developers in the country. And we also do a lot of hotels, resorts, and restaurants. At the same time, we collaborate with a lot of architects and developers all over the region and some parts of North America and the Middle East. And a lot of this work is just done in our offices here in Makati and in Green Hills. And we work collaboratively with a lot of very good Filipino architects.
Okay, so a very practical question. What is the standard budget for a family who would want a house built? Maybe say, what's a nice small but livable area? 120 or something like that.
A budget. Well, I think right now for starter couples, say a couple who just got married and intending to raise a family immediately.
Yeah. So they may not opt for they may not go the condo route because they intend to have a family.
House.
So it's an investment looking at the future. So what's a good size and what's an average budget? Ballpark.
That's a
course.
very good question. I would
Because that's
say,
the big
yes.
question for everyone, di ba?
Right. The average size right now would probably be around at least 45 square meters to 100 square meters. And what are the sizes of here?
Well,
For a house, okay.
For a-
yes. Well, most of our developments now are into the affordable segment, so they vary from 25 square meters to up to 40 square meters. If you say it's 40,
That's a condo.
yeah, that's for
That's for a
condos.
condo.
How about sa?
But for a house, around 40 square meters would be a good starter house. There are some that
And
are even
you
smaller.
you can always expand naman.
Yes. Now,
How much do you pay for that?
well, budgets now start from below 1 million.
So you can
to
have a
about-
house for below 1 million.
Oh yes, there are so many good developers now that have homes that are affordable below 1 million.
Okay. Let's take the property, the land out of the picture. Is there a way to cut costs? I mean, save money, be more efficient without sacrificing the structural integrity of your house.
Yes, there is a way. And I
Pero
think
hindi naman yung pangit yung bahay na mukhang box.
that's correct. There is a way, and I think the Filipinos are very good at this. They will buy their starter house first, which means they will buy the whole structural, well-engineered facility, the good house. They have the roof, they have the walls, they have the windows, they have the basic doors.
For under $1 million.
For under $1 million, and then they will develop it on their own. You don't necessarily have to move into a fully furnished home with all the beautiful tiles that you want.
Time is on your side.
Time is on your side. Resources are within your hands at your own convenience. You can put in your tiles. You can put in your cabinets. You could put in your other fixtures.
Eventually.
One at a time. One step at a time.
Will a respectable architect like you go for customers, clients like that sort of do not have sort of are working on a budget? You know, it's not a bottomless well of money.
Well, as a professional, as a licensed professional in the Philippines, it is our duty, and we're bound by ethics, to assist and help and support our countrymen, in particular, whenever they have a need. Just like a doctor should not turn down a patient just because it's a socialized circumstance.
I think
we help.
Cathy, I think the arrangement is you first talk to the architect, and the architect sort of usually has contacts as far as the contractors.
And the checklist, yes.
And the checklist. So, ang first step talaga is you find a good architect.
You find a good architect, and then you work with that professional. You consult a good engineer to ascertain the structural integrity of the facility. But then the wholeness of it is ascertained by the architect.
Okay. Dennis, someone's asking what are the advantages and disadvantages of condo as compared to townhouses, as compared to
the main difference, I as a homeowner myself,
cost.
I decided not to go to a condo, and my reason is so that there will be room for growth. New San Jose, by the way, is also not just into condos. We also have a project in Metro Manila Hills, that's in Montalban, just 20 minutes away from Quezon City. And the lots are, say, 100 to 120 square meters. You build the footprint of the house, say, 80 square for the floor area, and you have room for growth, for expansion, as Cathy is saying. So that, I think, is the main advantage of going townhouse or single detached, the room for growth, and having to have a space for your kids to roam around.
Cathy, are there tricks that a smart homeowner can use to sort of make a small house look a little bit bigger? Perhaps somewhere in the garden you can put some sort of fountain or something to make the house look more elaborate, but not breaking the bank doing so.
There are several tricks. You use color. You try to bring the outdoors in. You bring in plants. You have a sense of openness by bringing in more windows and having lighter colors, not putting too much, reducing a little bit of your clutter. That will help enlarge your space.
Okay, so basically, you can have a respectable looking, nice looking home for under $1 million or thereabouts?
Yes, you can have a respectable, nice looking home for under $1 million, which you can grow. It'll be your starter home.
But at the same time, you can adhere to the philosophy of green architecture.
Yes, and once
Does
the
that
Filipinos, yes,
does that sort of interlock?
that will interlock. And once the Filipinos get more educated about green architecture, sustainable design, the use of correct materials, the right planning, then henceforth, it will all fall into place. And we are getting there.
Okay. Practical Business will be right back after a few reminders. Don't go away.